call this meeting to order. We have a roll call.
Benson.
Here.
Bogenreith.
Here.
Jim Christensen.
Here.
Joan Christensen.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Green.
Here.
Hoffman. Here. Meyer.
Here.
All right, let's say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, can I get approval of the agenda?
Move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our first agenda items, let's see, I got it. Statute 12-21-36, recanvass and corrected abstract of votes in local election. In the case of a recount as to any local election, it shall be the duty of the recount board to recanvass the official returns as corrected by the certificate showing the result of the recount, and to make a new and corrected abstract of the votes cast as to such office, nomination, position, or question, which corrected abstract shall be signed by at least 2 members of said board and transmitted to the officer in charge of that election. Financial consideration, there's no cost. Recommendation, motion to accept the results as presented.
To do this again. Okay. This time we can start one race on this side and one race on that side.
A camera. Remember when I used to tell my kids, you gotta learn this stuff. You don't have to have a calculator. Thank you. All the time. Well, guess what?
Now they got one on their phone.
Yeah. Yeah. There is. Crazy how it switched.
There's 2 pages for each. Here are all their certificates that they signed. Their oaths of the county board. This is just for the end.
So these last duplicate. Okay, so we get it on 2 copies.
Lonnie moved, second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Oh, let's have a roll call.
Well, they both have to abstain.
Yeah, they both have to abstain.
Bogenreith,
Yes.
Jim Christensen,
Yes.
Joan Christensen,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Meyer,
Yes.
Benson,
Abstain.
Hoffman,
Abstain.
Okay, motion carries. Number 2, the one-year term.
Move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Yeah, there's nobody abstaining.
So I need a motion for adjournment at 6:56.
Don't we
Move.
have to approve bills?
Second.
Patty?
No, not yet. We got another meeting.
Oh.
So all in favor?
That was our.
All in
That's
favor?
why I asked.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.
I see.
Now we have another meeting.
The 10-second meeting.
Yes.
And you got 4 minutes, so if you haven't had to. April 22nd, 7 o'clock PM. Call this meeting to order. Can we have a roll call?
Benson,
Here.
Bogenreith,
Here.
Jim Christensen,
Here.
Joan Christensen,
Here.
Green,
Here.
Hoffman,
Here.
Meyer,
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Sorry.
Okay, let's say Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, can I have the approval of the agenda?
Move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We need approval of the minutes for the April 7th regular meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the April 14th canvassing meeting.
Move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next agenda, we have no old business. And then we need a motion to approve the bills.
Move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I guess we didn't have any comment section in here, so I'm just going to make my own comments. I'd just like to thank all you guys for being on the council, for your service. I think we worked really hard together and made new friends, and so I wish you all luck. And I also would like to wish luck to all the new council members taking on. Does anybody else have anything else they want to say before we
Thank you.
adjourn?
I know during the flood, you put in tons of hours, so, thank you, Mayor.
Thanks.
Agreed.
And all the city staff.
Yeah, I would like to just hope the new commissioners do a good job. And remember, this is all one town, we're not split in two.
Anybody else? No, go ahead.
Chris Bogenreef, 805 Lake Shore. I just, from all the new candidates that were elected, and from myself, we want to thank you, all of you, for your time and your dedication and all the strife and heartache that you guys had to go through. That's probably one of the toughest times in the city's history, and you guys all had to deal with that. And I think everybody in this room should join me in giving you a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, so motion for adjournment at 7:03.
Move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our last meeting is adjourned.
So the new commission will start at 7:15.
Take my little plaque.
So
See,
we
Bob?
get another break.
Another pledge of allegiance.
Another pledge of allegiance.
Now's your time to pick a new seat. Thank you, Gary.
See you, Bob.
Thank you. Good luck. Thank you, Joey. It's nice to meet you. You're in public service.
Tomorrow. You just gotta approve your appointment.
Are you grabbing those?
You can if you want.
I mean, I said this is the time to pick a new seat, so if you don't like where you sign them.
What I would appreciate is to sit in front of this.
A screen, yeah.
Does that work?
As long as you don't take the gavel with you.
No, I didn't take the gavel. I took my name tag, though.
Thank you, Beth.
Wrong hand, but good luck. No, I'm good.
I did. I kind of,
So what was this substantive?
For the recount?
Yeah.
We could,
Dreamt during the canvass,
I see.
Cindy just served in for writing it.
Gives a little extra oomph of authority.
well,
So I'm
it's
good at
funny
that.
because right here,
There's four.
got more than,
I think I'm like yelling in the microphone, but it's all right.
yeah, that was.
Will you do introduction for the oath of office? Kind of run that. Okay.
And that's the very first.
That's
All right. Okay.
Make you official before you officiate.
We ready to start? Okay.
I don't know if you can use that.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sworn in. That's right. So you open it up then, right?
I will, yes.
Because I'm not.
How many can I use your thing?
Oh, yeah.
I've never got to do that before. Okay, I get the privilege as a finance officer of swearing in our new commission. I'd like to say welcome aboard, and I'm excited for what this next term holds for us. So we're going to start with the mayor, and if you've already lost yours, I got a new one for you. We'll have you stand up over here by the flags. And
Okay.
raise your right hand. Raise your right hand and
All right. Oh, my glasses, Julie. I, Chris Bogenreef, have been elected to the office of mayor within and for the city of North Sioux City in said county and state, do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the state of South Dakota, and the ordinances of the city of North Sioux City, and that I will faithfully and impartially, to the best of my knowledge and ability, perform all of the duties of my office as commissioner, and I will render a true account of all money, credit, accounts, and property of any kind that may come into my hands while performing my duties.
sign.
All right.
And then we'll go with Lynn.
I, Lynn Hoffman, having been elected to the office of Commissioner within and for the city of North Sioux City, in said county and state, do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the state of South Dakota, and the ordinances of the city of North Sioux City, and that I will faithfully and impartially, to the best of my knowledge and ability, perform all of the duties of my office as Commissioner. And I will render a true account of all money, credit, accounts, and property of any kind that may come into my hands while performing my duties.
I, Julie Burbuth, having been elected to the office of Commissioner within and for the city of North Sioux City in said county and state, do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the state of South Dakota, and the ordinances of the city of North Sioux City, and that I will faithfully and impartially, to the best of my knowledge and ability, perform all the duties of my office as Commissioner, and I will render a true account of all money, credit, accounts, and property of any kind that may come into my hands while performing my duties.
I, Jessica Strain, having been elected to the office of Commissioner within and for the city of North Sioux City in said county and state, do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the state of South Dakota, and the ordinances of the city of North Sioux City, and that I will faithfully and impartially, to the best of my knowledge and ability, perform all of the duties of my office as Commissioner, and I will render a true account of all money, credit, accounts, and property of any kind that may come into my hands while performing my duties.
I, Vincent Tucker, having been elected to the office of Commissioner within and for the city of North Sioux City in said county and state, do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the state of South Dakota, and the ordinances of city of North Sioux City, and that I will faithfully and impartially, to the best of my knowledge and ability, perform all the duties of my office as Commissioner. And I will render a true account of all money, credit accounts, and property of any kind that may come into my hands while performing my duties.
You didn't sign it.
I did.
Oh, you did already.
I gave it to you. Yep. So we're good to go. All right. Do I
Floor
use
is
this?
yours. You
Okay,
may.
we're going to use this. Okay, call to order. Amy, we need you to do the roll call.
Yes. Mr. Bogenreef,
I'm here.
Ms. Hoffman,
Here.
Ms. Burhoop. Here. Ms. Strain,
Here.
Mr. Tucker.
Here.
Okay, Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I will look for a motion to approve the proposed agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. And there are no minutes to approve, so we're going to move right to council, department head, and community board reports. Jeff has some items, unless anyone else has anything to begin with.
Yeah, this will be the time in the agenda when you guys can make statements, updates on things that you're working on, that kind of thing. Since it's your first time, I just wanted to take a couple minutes and welcome you on behalf of the staff. We're all looking forward to working with you both individually as commissioners and collectively as a commission. Tonight's meeting will be a little bit longer than most, I hope, in that it's your first meeting. We have some organizational issues that we need to get through as a new commission. We need to redo some ordinances, code of conduct and that kind of thing. We'll spend some time on that, and then we have some business items that will follow that. Mainly, what I want to do is try to introduce some topics to you. The organizational items, I want to introduce them to you at this meeting and go over them with you. I'll let you digest them a little bit, and then when we return on April 28th, we'll revisit these ordinances and code of conduct again to try to flush them out. And then with the idea of having the first reading of the ordinance changes at our first regular meeting, which will be, our second regular meeting, which will be May 5th. Moving forward, I hope to have regular meetings on Monday and on the first Monday and the third Monday as we have. And then we'll have special meetings at 4 o'clock on off Mondays as a way to try to bring you up to speed on all the things that are going on with the city and to try to get you enough information so that we can make big votes on the first and third Monday of the month. We'll do that through June, at least through June, or up to June. And so that we can continue on the rest of the year with regular meetings. The time that I've listed on the agenda is mainly just a guide for me to, when I put these meetings together, I want to put together enough information or enough business items so that we don't go 3 and 4 hours. We try to keep it to an hour and a half to 2 hours. And also to give you an idea as to how long agenda items should take. And when I say that, I use it as a guide. We're having good discussion and it goes, sorry, how's that? Better? If we're having discussion on, say, organizational items and we're done in 25 minutes, we can move on. We don't have to spend the whole 45, and also if we're having good discussion and it's 50 minutes in, we keep going. It's just to give some guidelines on how to proceed on. Let's see. So with that, I guess we can just go ahead and get started. if you want.
All right, so we have community input. We're going to continue this. It's 3 minutes, and I thought I'd just share some of the ground rules they used at the town hall meeting. I think it's good moving forward. We might reread these a few times. So anyone can get up and speak, and limit that to 3 minutes. We ask that all questions and comments be respectful, to the point. Everyone's voice matters. We want to hear from as many people as possible. Disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. Anyone causing repeated interruptions or creating disrespectful environment may be asked to leave so that we can maintain a productive discussion for everyone. And don't forget to silence your cell phones. Other than that, please come forward if anyone has input.
Amy, could you set on?
And then please state your name and your address.
I'm Scott Olson, I'm 19 Penrose. In the past, the comment section has been often after the business has taken place, which means it's a little too late for community comment. So I'd like to see us be able to comment on those items as they occur.
Thank you. Is that prohibited now, as we're going through the agenda?
That's up to you to allow it, permit as running the meeting.
Okay. Okay.
I'm Anna Balk. I live on 60 North Shore Drive. My question is there any possibility of getting dirt in that crater between us and the school before the 1st of June? Because it just keeps eroding away and more of my pavement is caving in. And I'd really appreciate it if, we could do something to at least slow it down because it gets closer to my house each time some of it breaks off. And then, it's a danger to kids too, because, you can't always watch them. They're always playing, and I'd hate to see somebody get hurt.
Mhm.
But I do appreciate everything that you guys have done for us so far.
Thank you. Haven't done too much yet, but Jeff, do you have anything you can add on that topic?
Just that I had a conversation with Anna. We're working with Lieber, who is the school, who's doing the project for the school, to add on to that contract to try to get some of that filled in there. Once the project starts, so June 1st, I think the project's gonna start here in the first part of June, so we'll have to see where he's gonna start and try to work towards that end.
Okay. Thank you, Anna. Others? Okay. I'm anticipating that there won't be any or very few votes tonight. We're going to be probably bombarded with new information for the new commission, but we'll just dive into that. And I think next we have a host of ordinances that we're going to go through. And do I read these? Or
There's,
do
you can read that memo there, and
Okay.
then we'll turn it over to Sarah, but like I said, one of the things I want you to do is, there's 3 pretty lengthy ordinances in a code of conduct that we want to kind of walk through with you, to kind of explain it to you as we go, give you some more time to digest it, and then when we come back on the 28th, we'll have this on the agenda again, and as you digest it and have questions, let's discuss those at the next meeting, and we can go from there. The ultimate goal is to get these ordinances to the point where we can have a first reading on May 5th, second reading on May 12th, or whatever the next Monday is, and then 20 days after that, they'll become effective,
Okay.
After the publication.
after the publication. 20 days.
You want me to go ahead and read this then?
Yeah, you can go ahead and do that.
Okay, so the first one, the City of North Sioux City ordinances are geared to an aldermanic council form of government. With the change to an at-large commission form of government, city ordinances need to be modified to reflect that change. They also need to be modified to reflect the way the commission and staff will operate. Item 1 will consist of the introduction of a draft of 3 ordinances and a code of conduct. All documents were drafted within the context of state law. Throughout the ordinances are highlighted areas that will need commission decisions. For example, term lengths, compensation, etc. Number 1, Ordinance 2025 through 03 outlines how the commission will work. Ordinance 2025-04 outlines how the staff will work within the commission form. And 2025-05 basically goes through all the ordinances and changes council to commission. And the 4th item is the code of conduct. There's no financial consideration other than legal fees, and there's no recommendation at this time.
All right, so I will take over from here. Amy, Lily, and Jeff Dooley and I have been working on the draft of these ordinances and updates for several months. Have gone through a number of revisions as we've tried to prepare for the transition to the new form of government. As I've prepared today, I've noticed a number of things that are edits or that need to get updated, and you may have as well. Our request is that if you do have questions, concerns, or you see issues that need to be updated or edited, please feel free to send those to Jeff, and we can put together for the next meeting responses or updates for those things, and keep, again, reviewing and processing that to give you guys some time to get familiar with the changes that we are proposing to be consistent with South Dakota codified law on the commissioner form of government. You're going to find that in South Dakota codified law 9-9, and that is kind of your guidance as far as what is allowed, what the state provides. We do not reiterate the exact same statutory law that's already in the state code, which still governs you and will govern this commission for the entire time that we have that as our form of government. The ordinances are our local adaptation, what we are trying to put into words to explain that form of government, the way it will operate, and the terms and rules. We have used the South Dakota state law then to guide us in making sure that's consistent with what we're putting here. And we've used the amended 9-9, which there were a number of edits in this current legislative session that will go into effect here after it's done. So this should be the most up-to-date version of this, but it might be something that will be tweaked or updated as the state would be amending that. We would be doing the same. So you will see we are proposing to repeal 2.04 and 2.06 from your existing code of ordinances. We had a chapter that addressed the mayor and a chapter that addressed the council. And so we're repealing those entirely, and then we're reenacting 2.04 to address the mayor and commissioners. So consolidating that into one code section. Because the commissioner form is pretty interdependent as far as all of your positions are on the Board of Commission. This will be referred to as the Board of Commissioners, even if we're having the mayor as part of that and as part of that vote. And so we are organizing this then into one single chapter. So tonight I'm going to go through this in pretty exhaustive detail as much as I can share. This might get a little long, but I think it's important to put in the work now to help you understand and review these provisions so that you're well aware of what they require as we adopt these and get ready to go in May. So we'll start off with that first. All of these, the code sections, we use the chapter as the first two digit numbers, so 2.04, and then the individual sections have a numeric number attached to them. So this first section talks about the composition of the board and the qualifications for those office. Those are taken directly out of state code. These are not options for us to adapt, but they would be requirements for those positions and how we would organize the board. The next, section 2, talks about terms of office. Under our current ordinances, the council and mayor had a term of office of 4 years. There are options under the commission form of government for having a term of office that would be anywhere from 2 to 5 years. And so this section is stating what you will be selecting as the term of office. For this initial election, of course, we had a 1-year term, a 2-year term, a 3-year term, and a 4-year term commissioner. But we don't continue with those same terms because that wouldn't make much sense. So you need to pick a term of office that will apply to the commissioner and to the mayor. And that does not have to be the same as what we have had in the past, which is that 4-year term. It could be 2, 3, or 5. I've left it here 4 because that's what we currently have. I will tell you that if you do a 5-year term of office for the commissioner and mayors, you would have 1 person being elected each year on a 5-year cycle. And so that neatly kind of makes it so that you have a continuity of persons that have some experience, and then is followed by 1 person new each time. When you do a 4-year cycle, there will be 3 of those years that will have 1 commissioner elected, and the 4th year will have 1 commissioner and a mayor. And so you'll have a replacement 1, 1, 1, and then the 4th year it would be 2 persons coming on new, 1 of them being the mayor and the other one being a commissioner. If you do a 3-year cycle, you will then have alternating years where you have 2 replacing individuals for 2 of those years and 1 with a single one. So it would be mayor and commissioner. Next year would be 2 new commissioners. The 3rd year would be 1 commissioner. So you have more turnover as you go with that smaller number of years. And of course, then if you go down to a 2-year cycle, you would have a cycle where you would always be having 2 people being elected. So there would be 2 commissioners, mayor and 2 commissioners, a mayor and a commissioner, and continue on that cycle going forward. So those are some things to consider as you will need to decide what kind of cycle do you want for continuity purposes, what kind of cycle is appropriate for attracting new people to run for office or to keep people in office. So you will be needing to make a selection for what that is. I've highlighted within this document and the others those areas where you do have an option. And so next council meeting will be, or next commission meeting, correct myself, I'll probably do that a few times. We will need to get some input from you before we draft a final form to be presented in May for approval. The replacement of the terms of office in coming years, when you would serve out a full term and then have a position go on the ballot, that individual who will take over will start on the first May meeting. So on the first meeting of the month following the election. That happens when we have someone who is still holding that term of office. So the election will happen, it will be canvassed, and then the person who is elected to that new position will start at the first May meeting, which is similar to what was done in the past. For this commission, we had vacancies, so there was no persons holding those offices, which is why after the canvass, you were sworn into office and you start immediately. In the future, again, if we would have vacancies that occur, if a person would resign, move out of the area or something along those lines, that person's position would again be filled immediately if there was a vacancy in office. But if they filled out a full term, it starts in May. The next position, or next chapter or section, I'm sorry, here, 03 is oath of office and bond. and just repeats the statutory requirements where you do have to be sworn into office. Bonds are not required under the current state statute as long as the city or governing body maintains a blanket bond with appropriate coverage and amounts. So North Sioux City does do that. Therefore, you're not required to post a bond for your service. Excuse me. Next section, .04, addresses the compensation for the governing body and its members. The areas that I've highlighted here reflect what is currently budgeted for the mayor and the former council positions. And so those amounts are what are currently in the Code of Ordinances. These amounts could be changed, subject to appropriate changes that would also have to be made to the budget as well for those. But we will include in here that compensation if you choose to make any changes to that. The next section, .05, addresses resignation of mayor and commissioner and vacancy in office. This is one of the sections that I noted that I did make a change. So the last half of the second paragraph is actually, you'll see it repeated in .06. So that'll be one of the changes that I'll update in terms of explaining in these two sections, .05 and .06, what happens when we have either a permanent vacancy that occurs in either office of the mayor or a commissioner, or any temporary absence or incapacity. A few changes that I'll make note of here is that under the council form, we had essentially a president of the council that took over. If the mayor was absent, they would run the meeting. There is no standing type of position like that under the commissioner form. So if the mayor is absent for a temporary, or if you can't make a meeting, or you're sick, or there's something like that, then the remaining commissioners will need to, by majority vote, appoint the person who would then be the mayor pro tempore, which is a Latin phrase. And that is just, that person is temporarily the mayor and has all of the authority of the mayor to run the meeting, and any other duties of the mayor until the mayor is no longer vacant, is no longer incapacitated or absent. So that's a different form of procedure. That could be a different person each time. And you'll need to just address that each time there would be an absence for that. It could also apply to a situation in between council meetings for duties that would need to be taken over for the mayor. And we'll just have to address that as you advise or as is needed. For commissioners, if there is an absence, a temporary absence for that, then there will be a vote, again, that the commissioners would say who would take over those duties. The mayor can also be doing that as well. If there is a complete vacancy, so if it isn't just a temporary absence of the mayor's position, then the commissioners will appoint one of their commissioners to be the acting mayor for the remainder of that vacancy. So during that time period, the person would hold both the position of the acting mayor and a commissioner. You don't get 2 votes for that, however, you still have 1 vote, but there would be 4 persons on the commission at that point in time. The acting mayor really only takes place if there's a complete vacancy of office, so a permanent time period where the mayor was not available for the remainder of that commission. I think that explains most of those terms, but again, all of those requirements for vacancies, whether they're temporary or permanent, are governed by South Dakota law, and so we're just reiterating what those expectations are and the options that are available by statute. Next section, .07, talks about meetings of the commission. By South Dakota law, commission governments are to meet once a week or as otherwise determined by ordinance. And that's the reason why we're starting here.
with meetings that will be taking place weekly on the schedule that Jeff had mentioned previously. You may by ordinance approve the same schedule that you had for the council meetings, which were the first and third Mondays of the month. Those previously were at 7 p.m. And administration has suggested that we start those at 6 p.m. An earlier period of time that might be better for completing business in a reasonable time and for the public's considerations as well. But that time to start and the days on which you will have meetings, again, are options for which you can provide feedback and suggestions for what you want to see there for regular meetings. For special meetings, we've had a structure here, basically a process for how those may be called at the request of the mayor, any two city commissioners, or by the city administrator and city finance officer to schedule those special meetings. Those would be ones off if we did not have one that's regularly scheduled, which does need to occur from time to time. Notice of those are given again as required by South Dakota law with no less than 24 hours notice and still following the same open meetings requirements and publication of that information to provide notice to all of you as commission members as well as the media and the public. We follow whatever the statute is required for those particular types of meetings. For emergencies, those can be up to 1 hour and ahead of time. So when we have those emergency situations, and those do also occur from time to time, we will provide as much notice as necessary or as possible. Finally, in this section for meetings of the commission, we added a reference to a parliamentary procedure to be used. We did not previously, under the old ordinances, have any guiding document that would provide reference for how we should be running meetings, what process should be used. The copy that I have suggested to city staff was simplified parliamentary procedure, which is a document that is published by Iowa State University Extension. It's not specific to Iowa, but is a simplified form of parliamentary procedure that is summarized in an 18-page document rather than the book, which you will have to reference for Robert's new revised rules of order. So those are the two there's actually more than two, many other parliamentary procedure guides that you could use. Probably the most frequently used would be Robert's rules of order. And they, I guess caution I would just say is that it is a very complicated book. And so I think somewhat it's more accessible to have that document be that simplified parliamentary procedure. So I don't believe that's included in your packet here, but we'll make sure that we have that distributed so you can consider and take a look at what that might be and how that could work for the city. The next section talks about, of course, .08, our meetings will be open to the public, and that we only go into executive session, which does not include the public, by the requirements of South Dakota Law 1-25-2. There are special procedures for doing that and how we act or conduct our business, only covering the item of business that is appropriate for executive session. We will be planning to do some training on meetings, on those types of things as we go forward. So you can look forward to those things, or certainly ask city administration for anything that you want us to specifically train or give you some guidance on for how to be conducting those types of things. .09 addresses quorum and the votes that are required for action. You have a board of 5 people, so the majority of members is required for a quorum to do any business, and that would be 3 members here and present to do that. If there is a commission seat that is vacant, either the mayor or a commissioner, then a quorum still consists of the majority of all the remaining commissioners who are qualified to serve. For one person being vacant, or one seat being vacant, that leaves 4, so majority is still 3. So majority will also always have to be more than 50%. There are most votes, I would say, required to have a majority vote, so 3 that would vote in favor in order to have action be effective. Some limited votes do require more than that, such as if we decide to sell any municipal real property, physical ground, that requires a 2/3 vote. So for a commission of 5, that's a vote of 4 that would be required to approve those special types of votes. All votes will be taken or recorded. You do have to make a verbal vote that we can't have any secret votes. And as necessary, you can request for a roll call. And the mayor would typically do that if there is any dissenting votes, then those are usually called for the roll so that we can accurately record those for the minutes. Amy, of course, takes the notes and minutes of our proceedings, and those votes are recorded in those minutes proceedings as well. Section 10 provides that the commission, so all of you, the mayor and commissioners, are the judge of yourselves in terms of any election or qualification issues. You also have the authority and power to develop your own rules of procedure and code of conduct. You can also then provide any sanctions for any conduct that is out of order or failure to follow procedures. There is also an option here to establish attendance requirements for all regular meetings. One of the things that administration has noted when we were preparing this is that we didn't put any specific attendance requirement in at this time. And if we do have an attendance requirement, we should have that articulated. And so we will be seeking any input that you have for options for what would be the requirement for attending meetings. And we do have some options from other communities to take a look at. So there's no standard under South Dakota law as to what that attendance requirement would be. You have the freedom to develop that as is appropriate at your discretion. Section 11 just gives you the authority to call witnesses, to provide testimony or information to the commission as needed, produce documents, records, or to serve process on any others that are needed for business that you conduct. This section, along with section 12 below it, are kind of just standard provisions under South Dakota law of the authority that you have as commissioner, and as well the obligations that you have to not commit any misconduct or neglect of your duties in service of the governing body. These next sections, starting with section 13 and continuing through section 18, are the real detail of the government for each of the various positions. There is a paragraph that outlines what the mayor's duties and authorities are under the commission. I have not taken this exactly out of South Dakota statute to repeat what's in there, but adapted this to what the form of government is here in North Sioux City. And so for those things that didn't apply to us or that we don't have or aren't applicable at this point in time, we've tailored this to be specific for North Sioux City. So you'll look at each of those individual areas and kind of understand what your statutory authority is. One of the things that you will notice is that right now we have 4 commissioners, but at one of our, probably the first May meeting, we will be asking or putting on the agenda for the commission to select who will be the Commissioner of Public Safety, the Commissioner of Public Works, the Commissioner of Utilities, the Commission of Finance and Revenue. So each of those are separately defined under South Dakota law with different areas of focus. We, of course, have, different areas of public safety. So again, we've tailored that to with what we have here for our community. You should be looking at those different positions and as commission members, considering what are your interests, what are your skills, and we'll need to decide amongst yourselves who will be nominated to be each one of those positions. So that will be a separate vote by nomination, second discussion, and then appointment for each of those separate positions. So I would anticipate we'll do that at the first May meeting. Those kind of separate into different areas of focus, what will be handled. If there is any commissioner who is not available or can't take over their duties, then the mayor can come in and help assist with those things, or have the commission redelegate or reassign those things. Or if there's other areas that aren't covered by those things, again, the commission itself can make a majority vote to address those things. Basically, everything will happen by a majority vote of the commission as far as separation into those duties, other than the kind of temporary assistance that could be provided. I think that covers then the basic structure of our mayor and commissioner form of government for that first ordinance. Again, if you have any input that you see there, please direct that to Jeff. We'll be prepared and answer any questions for everyone and share at our next meeting, or any edits that you see as necessary. So we will go ahead and move on then to the next code of ordinance, which is 2025-04. This will be repealing the section, let's see here, 2.08 of our existing code of ordinances that only addressed the city administrator, as well as a certain portion that addressed the city attorney that was lumped in with the compensation section for mayor and council. So there were some things in that existing code of ordinances that were not covered. We didn't have anything that addressed any other officers, of which you do have many appointed officers of city government, as well as appointed positions on the boards. And so we tried to pattern this after other, I think, model communities that had that more specifically defined, that would have all of those enumerated appointed officer positions included, and included that in this new chapter 2.08, which covers appointed officers and then generally any as employees as well. So that first section, 0.01, addresses appointment of officers, and it enumerates all of those. Those include the city attorney, city administrator, city engineer, city finance officer, the library board of trustees members, the park and recreation board members, the planning commission members and alternates, and the police chief. So those would all be appointed officers that someone will need to make a motion in a second and have a majority vote to approve by this Board of Commissioners for them to hold those appointed offices. I know that there's a code section here. Again, if you see any edits that need to take place, I'll take your careful input and eyes as you look at those. Generally then, the duties of the appointed officers will be just kind of generally defined in the next section, 0.02. That are prescribed for those offices. And so some of those are set out in state code that advise what the chief law enforcement officer is authorized to do, the city finance officer, the city attorney, and we'll also kind of have a general paragraph that addresses each of those within this chapter as well. These first sections, as far as the 0.02, 0.03, 0.04, just kind of talks about generally the requirements that it would apply to all of those appointed positions in terms of they're expected to turn over the records when they're done with that position to the next successor. And that again, like the commission, they do not have to post a separate bond. That's covered by our insurance coverage, as is allowed under South Dakota law. Compensation for those appointed officers are not included or specified here in the code, but just is reflected that as the governing body would approve. And so, for an example, the city attorney has an engagement letter on an annual basis, and that has a compensation amount that would be approved by the governing board on a regular basis. There are some of your city appointed officers who have employment agreements, and so those might be reflected in that. But you could also do that by a resolution or other motion to set compensation. Those are all options under this structure in the ordinance. So starting then with .06 and continuing forward, we've kind of outlined the specific positions for the appointed officers. So the first one is your city administrator. We have taken the bulk of really the whole amount of what was in your existing ordinances and added this to this section, but probably reformatted that as you look at it. That it is the same that it was there, with the exception of sections or parts under, I guess it's .07 that enumerates the duties. Jeff has the most under city administrator that are enumerated. So it was very detailed, what was previously adopted for his position. There was some additions that I have suggested here for N, O, P, Q, and R, which you'll note at the end of .07. Those are additional duties that are articulated in the City of Canton's Code of Ordinances that I used in part as a model because they are a commission form of government that recently in the last year adopted an ordinance adding a city administrator to assist the commission. And so that's a good model for us to look at, and these were additional ones that weren't included in the other more standard ones that you see in multiple other city communities, but I thought were good ones to add, particularly with their example as a commission form of government using a city administrator as we have. The city attorney section is next. I won't go into detail of the individual ones here, but those each then are enumerated. The city attorney, city engineer, city finance officer, and police chief all have their own paragraphs that generally describe what those persons' duties or obligations are. Those are probably also further described in state statute or by individual job duties or descriptions, or by the individual, like for myself, a letter of engagement that's approved by the council, or at present, our city engineer has a contract, and so that's reflected here, that you can do that, and that contract would obviously set out what those expectations are as an option for that, and reflects also the statutory requirements. We go down to .12 or .12, municipal employees. This reflects that the city commission has the authority to hire personnel, professional or otherwise, and to set that compensation upon recommendation by the city administrator and any applicable standard pay schedule. So we do have some pay schedules for the city employees as well as union employees, and so those are all for the commission's approval, and the majority would need to pass those. So it's the city commission's authority to authorize those terms and conditions of employment as you deem necessary, with the city administrator making those suggestions and handling the administration of those employees. Then the final point 1.3 is section addresses employment policies. We do have a personnel policy manual that covers all city employees. And we have also started a revision of that, which of course has things that we need to update for the commission form of government as well. So that we didn't include in this current agenda, but will be coming to you soon for approval and adoption as well. Those cover the bulk of what I see as the major changes that we need to pass to set up things for the commission. This final ordinance 2025-05 is what I call kind of a correcting ordinance or an updating ordinance. So this is a whole lot of pages. I don't know, maybe 25, 28. I'm not going to go through all of these. This is really just updating any of those references to council, anything to the aldermanic. All of those have been updated to a commission reference. We hope that we've got them all. This did include a review of every single chapter of the Code of Ordinances to hopefully get all of those updated and cleaned up.
Before we go into the code of ethics, I just wanted to point out as we work in this new form of government, we may find other instances within the ordinance not covered in here that we want to change, just on the operational part of it. We'll cross those bridges when we come to them, but I would also like to, the zoning ordinances are something that we need to redo in time. And our ordinances themselves have some places where we need to refine and update too. So this group of ordinance changes are basic for what we need to do as a commissioner form of government. As we get in later into the year, we'll be bringing other ordinance changes to you for consideration, both from a proactive standpoint and also just as in reaction to things that we're doing that we see that we need to change. So as we do business throughout the course of the year, we'll continually be looking at these, not these specific ordinances, but the ordinances in general.
All right, and again, we'll welcome all of your feedback, questions, or anything. If you direct those to Jeff, we'll look at those, review those in preparation for the next meeting, and be prepared to share answers and responses with all of you in a public meeting.
And I would encourage the citizens too, if you've had experience with other councils or boards and you have suggestions on, say, length of terms, please share them with Jeff or Amy.
All right, then we'll, in this last section, under this agenda item, I've got the, a revised Code of Ethics and Conduct for elected and appointed officials. So this is intended to cover not only yourselves, but all of those individuals that we talked about in that section, new section 2.08, that would be all of the appointed officials that would serve. The officers enumerated there, as well as those that are on the various boards and commissions of the city. So this is a document that started in 2024. It's not the same, but we had started drafting this because when I first became the city attorney, I was asking, that one of the first things was, okay, well, where's your code of conduct? What are the rules of the game that we're all playing by, and how do we address things? And no one had that. I do think it's an important document that helps guide us all to know what's expected and to address things as needed for how we do our meetings and how we otherwise interact with each other, the public, other elected officials, and employees of the city government. So this was adapted from an example from the city of Spearfish. If you go out and you look, you'll find a lot of different communities have code of conducts and ordinances. There's no one right way to do this. This is your document, and so if you want to make changes to it or suggest any revisions, all of this can be adapted to what is appropriate and necessary. This draft is what we are recommending from the city attorney and the city administration that's collaborated on this to provide recommendations for this. But there's a number of different styles or approaches, and we welcome your input and insight for that as well. This is divided into 4 sections. So it covers and addresses first ethics, then it goes to conduct, or kind of basically the interactions, and then the 3rd section is sanctions for violating code of conduct, and the last section is on implementation. So the first kind of introductory area here just reiterates a public policy or purpose of this document is to help us all provide the public with confidence in the system, and trust in the process and their elected officials, that everyone will be treated fairly, and that their officials will be acting with integrity in city government. Everyone here, whether it's an elected official or appointed official, has a duty and is part of making sure that that integrity is served and that the public is best served with good government and officials that are acting appropriately with each other, with the public, and with our staff as well. We did make note here that under the new commission form of government, you are, as elected representatives to this body, are elected at large, and are that in that way similar to your appointed officials, as well as that you are not serving any particular ward or subset of your neighborhood as was under the council form of government. And so all of our elected officials now in the city of North Sioux City are elected to serve the entire community and not any of those special smaller subsets of interests or neighborhoods. And so that's just something to keep in mind and for everyone to be cognizant of as we're making decisions, discussing things, and selecting or soliciting feedback from our community and input on the things that we are needing to do. All right, then we'll get into the ethics portion, which starts out in section A of this. Again, it kind of reiterates, I'll just kind of hit on those principles. These are all more specifically defined or explained, but in terms of ethics, we are expecting all of the elected representatives and appointed officials to act in the public interest, of course, to be always letting the law and the policy of this community be your guide for your actions. So the applicable laws that we need to be mindful of include federal and state law, as well as our local ordinances here in North Sioux City as we are carrying out those duties. And we are expected to have a reasonable or exercise care to make sure that we are looking at those things and using those as our guidance for actions. Our conduct is expected to be professional as we interact with each other and with the public as well. We've set out here an expectation that we have respect for the process of government and the roles or the rules of order that we would be establishing for us to abide by. Obviously, there's going to be times when everyone has a difference of opinion or, heated debate could take place. But the ideal is that we would hear those different perspectives and then come to a resolution by the majority of the governing body and move forward with that resolution having been decided after a full discussion, full debate, and then approval by the majority of the commission. And the appointed officials would be expected to, follow whatever the laws that were imposed by the commission or that policy guidance. For conduct at public meetings, the ethics requirements here, we would be expecting everyone to prepare themselves for the public issues, to be reviewing the materials that you're receiving, listening to each other, to the public, and participating in those discussions as you're making those decisions, and making those decisions on the basis of the merits of the issues and not on any particular interests or unrelated considerations. There are very specific conflict of interest requirements that are set out under state law. We've reiterated those expectations here. You do have to identify and avoid any conflicts of interest. And when those are identified, such as if you're going to be receiving payment, or if you would stand to benefit from a contract or a property transaction, or any other type of action that could be happening, or a family member could even be a benefit for that. So those types of things have to be avoided. If you do not avoid those things, actions by state law are void if you participated in that process without addressing that conflict of interest. We've set out here an expectation that when you have a conflict of interest, you will not participate in the discussion or vote on that particular issue. The member is expected to disclose that conflict of interest to the extent that is necessary to be reflected in the minutes prior to discussion, so that the rest of you are aware of that and can then be, everyone can be accountable for how that should happen. And when you have a conflict of interest, you will state, rather than voting yay or nay or being silent, you would abstain from voting in that instance. Each of you individually are the persons who have to determine if you have a conflict of interest. If there is a situation where you've disclosed that or others are aware of that, the council does have the ability to, by a 2/3 vote, I'm sorry, not the council, the commission, so that would be a vote of 4 to identify that conflict and prohibit that member from voting. I would hope that would never occur, but that there is an option for the commission to be addressing that if the individual commission member does not. That covers, I think, everything under conflict of interest. There are, of course, going to be information topics that could come before the commission that address confidential information. An excellent example of that would be when we have an employment situation that has to be addressed, or other types of confidential privileged information which are allowed to be addressed in executive session. And when we do that under the requirements of state law, anything that's discussed in executive session is considered confidential and privileged and should not be shared in the public to preserve that. We'll be providing guidance on what those things are, how that's addressed, and would be a topic of future training and information as we go forward. Also, in terms of ethics, it's important for public officials to be mindful of use of public resources, and that you may have access to public resources that you cannot take advantage of that. That would include both staff time, equipment, facilities, anything that could be used for a private gain or your own personal issues. Of course, you need to focus on what's important for the public. The same would be avoiding representing private interests. You cannot appear before, for example, the Planning Commission to promote a certain thing to go through the Planning Commission if you're on this governing body. Or a member of the Planning Commission cannot be representing someone coming through their review. So representation of private interests are prohibited by these ethics rules. The same would be true for any private advocacy. Members are to represent the official policies of the city, the commission, the board, to the best of their ability. When you are, representing the city out in other groups, you may be appointed to different things. You want to be mindful that you are representing the city's position on those other boards or commissions that you might be appointed to or to serve on, and not be representing your private interests for that. Addresses there too as well any support for kind of those political issues for future seats, how we address those types of things. We also reflect in here that the members will respect that the commission is the structure or the body which is making policy for the entire city. And included with that are those municipal code of ordinances, our job descriptions, any organizational charts, and that's the policy role of the commission to kind of set that and organize that, and then to respect that in how it's carried out. The next section talks about independence of boards or commissions. So I'm specifically referring here to like the Planning Commission, the Parks and Recreation Board, the Library Board, that you do have the ability to appoint individuals to those commissions or those boards, but they then are independent in making their decisions, and it would be inappropriate to try to influence those one against the other, and trying to influence the outcomes of those. A number of those make recommendations to this board, so your participation in that process could be unduly influential if you were taking part in their actions. And finally, we have here that it's an ethical principle that you maintain a positive workplace environment. You as city officials, just like any other employee, are expected to follow those, anti-harassment, anti-discrimination expectations, and we could be, as a city, liable for a negative or harassing workplace environment, and so important to follow those principles. Next section then talks about the conduct amongst each other in public meetings, your conduct with the public in public meetings, and your conduct with city staff. We've kind of highlighted those roles in terms of, again, having a principle that's stated under each of those different areas. So as far as your elected and appointed officials' conduct with each other, the expectations for this code of conduct would be that you would honor the role of the mayor in maintaining order at meetings, to practice civility and decorum in discussions and debate, to avoid any personal conduct or comments that would could offend others. And this gets into if there is any issue that would come up about this, you could address it through parliamentary procedure with a point of personal privilege or order where the mayor would be able to help control or maintain that discussion. Additional principles are to demonstrate effective problem-solving approaches in your work. And then we've added here a section on adding items to the agenda. This has been a particular point of issue previously, and so we detailed how that would be specifically handled, so everybody, again, knows the rules of the game or how we're going to conduct ourselves with each other. Under this code of ordinances, items are placed on the agenda for consideration upon recommendation of your appointed officials, including city attorney, city engineer, finance officer, police chief, or public works superintendent, or upon request from any commission or board established by the committee. An item could also be placed on the agenda at the direction of the mayor, the city administrator, or concurrence of a majority of the commission. So if the commission members want to propose items for future agenda, we would have that be discussed and have a motion made at a meeting to go on a future meeting, which is a process that we followed at least sometimes in the last year with the council. So that's the expectations for adding items for the agenda. Next section talks about our conduct with the public in public meetings, and gives some guidance as far as this time period when we open it up to the public to provide input, how we're going to address the public and to provide them with an opportunity to share their feedback, guidance, or criticisms of what's happening in government, and gives you some principles to follow in doing so. The requirements here are to be welcoming to speakers and treat them with care and gentleness, to be fair and equitable in allocating public hearing time to individual speakers. This allows the mayor to determine or announce limits to the speakers at the start of the public comment, or that could be addressed in public hearing. So I've seen other bodies where they might say, we'll have public comment that will address anything that's not on the agenda. And then you could allow people to comment on items that are on the agenda as that occurs. Or we sometimes specially schedule a public hearing that might be required by statute. And that would be an official public hearing where we would open it in the middle of the hearing to specifically address that, allow the public discussion, and then close that before the council would take their action. Additional expectations for conduct with the public are to practice active listening, to maintain an open mind, give people an opportunity to inform the government of what they need to have. To me, I think this is one of the most fundamental processes of government, is that we provide due process. And so we give people an opportunity to be heard before the folks that are making their decisions for their community. And this is a very critical piece in our democracy for that. When people are speaking from the public, you can certainly ask for clarification. I'd recommend that the mayor be handling that. So individual council members could say, you know, Mr. Mayor, could we have this person explain X, Y, or Z as part of parliamentary procedure? That's typically how that would be followed. But the public comment period is really not a time period where we're trying to debate or argue or try to persuade the public. It's for us to listen, to seek information from them, and to get clarification. We can use the time in the rest of the meeting and your points as you're discussing things to advocate for your position, but it's really not a time to be doing that back and forth when it's the public is making those comments. Let's see. And then the conduct of meetings, this kind of just explains again some of the process that we're going to expect people to, rather than sitting in the audience and kind of shouting out things or making comments under the other people's breaths. It would be best if people would come forward, speak at the microphone, identify themselves at the podium, and begin their remarks from an official standpoint. The mayor is given the authority to prevent people from being belligerent or taking over the meeting. That's why there is time periods to be limiting in terms of not allowing the public to subvert really the actions or the good government from proceeding if they are being out of order in their public comments. Additionally, it's also under parliamentary procedure prohibited that you be making comments from the back, booing, cheering, clapping, and those types of things that would be disruptive and I think counter persons that are trying to come forward and speak at the podium. That type of public presentation or feedback is intimidating to those that are trying to speak and doesn't allow those individuals who are speaking at the podium to get their points across or be heard. And the mayor is allowed to set those types of limits throughout the meeting. The next section goes on to address public officials' conduct with city staff, and sets out a number of principles to help that relationship. The first there is to treat all staff as professionals, to not try to disrupt city staff from their jobs, never publicly criticize individual employees or getting involved in administrative functions. Some of these are really just principles of management for anyone who has, been involved in business. We are a business here at the city, and our employees are a valuable asset that have knowledge and experience that we need to retain and make sure that we are treating those folks with the respect that they deserve and are appropriate for them, just as any employee would have that expectation of their employer. And so these principles are set out here to guide you in your interactions with city staff. We do have the structure where a city administrator is assisting the commission, and he is directly responsible for those folks that are employed in city government. And the best, direction is to handle that through Jeff, to address those things or concerns that you have. And Jeff can either facilitate or participate in that, specific feedback with an individual that would be needed or direction. So that's the structure that would be expected for the commission. You're also prohibited from soliciting political support from staff. We do have some code sections and provisions within our policy manual that address those types of political activities that we can also provide some education on and share information with that as well. This also includes a disclaimer that there is no attorney-client relationship. My client is the city of North Sioux City. Jeff is not my client, Amy's not my client, and nor are any of you as individuals my client. And so my advice will always be what is in the best interest of the city of North Sioux City as a corporate entity. And you may, be directing questions or seeking guidance or information, but I cannot give anyone any particular individual advice. Or if there would be issues where I would say, hey, this is a conflict, would advise you to get your own attorney in those types of situations. Direction for appointed officials, which we've specifically noted here for city attorney and city engineer, is again not at the direction of any one commissioner or to be an individual directing that, but it should be that the city is directing the city engineer or the city attorney to address different issues. If any of those things you would want to propose, you should put those on a meeting agenda for the whole commission to discuss and agree on. Next section then is for the conduct with boards and commissions. And it gives you some guidance for if you are attending any board or commission meetings, what you should be careful to address or how you should conduct yourselves. Limiting your personal opinions or your contact with those board members and commission members to simply getting clarification rather than trying to advocating for or against a particular position. You can certainly clarify or seek information from them, but when they are making independent recommendations for the commission, it's important to let that process proceed, give them respect in how they choose to serve the community, and not be trying to meet an individual commissioner's preferences or direction for that particular board. Again, it's reiterated to be respectful of diverse opinions and to keep your political solicitations out of those types of relationships as well. The next section addresses sanctions that can be imposed First of all, we would be requiring every person who is serving either an elected position or an appointed position to acknowledge this code of ethics and conduct. So signing that they acknowledge that they have been given this and understand the information that has been provided. And then we expect you to abide by and govern your behavior and your conduct to be consistent with those expectations. For commission members, we set out the process for what would be followed if somebody is not following those expectations. In those cases, there can be a reprimand or a censure that would be by the vote of this entire commission, or other sanctions that could be imposed. It gives you some guidance as to, addressing those things with an individual member. And if that doesn't address that or resolve the issue, it can be brought forward to be addressed at a public meeting. For board and commission members, a little bit different since they're more similar to an employee or the appointed officials, that those instances where you feel are violating the code of conduct or ethics can be addressed through counseling, reprimands, or written warnings, and eventually with sanctions if those would be necessary, including removal of office for cause by a majority vote of this body. You can also investigate or ask for a city administrator or city attorney to address those issues as well. And then finally, the implementation of this code of ordinances is that it would be something that would be shared, similar to this situation with orientations for all new candidates or elected officials, that they would be aware that this is a code of conduct and code of ethics that are applicable to the position. And then give some training or guidance on this for any new members that are entering office. It's something that we would expect to be periodically reviewed by this commission and updated as necessary or as appropriate. If you find that something doesn't work or isn't feasible for this body, it's not meant to be a document that doesn't ever change or evolve. And if that is necessary, this commission would be the entity that would be approving those changes or amendments. And then any other statutory provisions, rules, bylaws should be referencing this. So our planning commission's bylaws or our other boards might have bylaws, they should reference the expectation that they would follow this as well. So that gets us through my lengthy presentation.
Have you ever had one?
45 minutes, I'm gonna tell you
I thought I had 55.
that. That's all right.
That's probably the most you've ever had to speak.
Oh, no.
I know that took a little bit of time, but we thought it was important to kind of set the tone for meetings moving forward and how we can conduct business in this room and administratively moving forward. And I think going through it in this much detail kind of sets the table for our next meeting to really bring up some discussion items. Any items you have of question or want discussion on.
So we're about an hour and a half into the meeting.
Mhm.
Does anyone need a break, or do you want to go into the next item? There's a lot of people waiting patient for this part, so let's just try to move into it, I think. So the next item is the McCook Lake short-term mitigation. So John Brown and Ross are here with Stockwell Engineering to introduce some concepts and modeling. And Jeff, do you know if these will be on the city website after tonight?
All the stuff is in the packet,
Okay,
so it should be available forever on the website through that. But
okay.
as we get through the process, we'll continue to put more information up on that. But before we turn it over to John, I just kind of wanted to make some clarifications on this. I think a lot of you have heard us talk about the short-term versus the long-term mitigation for the issue that happened in June. We're talking about today is the short-term mitigation, and that's probably a poor description of it. It's called the short term because we think we can accomplish it in a shorter time frame than a bigger picture diversion. This short term mitigation is the essentially McCook Lake mitigation plan. It mitigates against water that came across in 2024 and provides it a path so it doesn't destroy homes and destroy the lake and all that. The long-term mitigation plan is something we're working on through the letter of intent that the Union County has submitted to the Corps of Engineers, which would either create a levee system or a diversion channel that would allow us to modify the 1976 plan that we're currently operating under. I asked Stockwell to basically come up with a plan that would mitigate against, to some level, the 2024 event. And I asked him, this plan was put together not necessarily considering the land for which it went over or the cost. It was just based on hydraulics, getting the water from point A to point B without causing, mitigating the damage that it would cause. The long-term mitigation is one that will hopefully divert water around so that we can get rid of the 1976 plan. We wanted to introduce these tonight and develop them over the next few weeks with the objective of trying to apply for some FEMA mitigation funding that's due May 30th. And that, once that happens, then we want to continue to develop this and try to get it towards implementation. But the first step was to show you some concepts that we believe will work. There are some challenges with all of them, but we wanted to put forth solutions that are based on hydraulics and proven with models. And so when John is presenting this to you, that's kind of the direction we're trying to go, is to get some ideas out there so that we can develop them and trying to move them towards implementation. So, John.
Thanks, Jeff. John Brown with Stockwell Engineers. I also have Ross Cookta. He is an engineer in our office and acts as your planning and zoning director as well. So between Ross and I, you'll see us quite a bit over the next year or so, or however many years this takes to implement some of these improvements. But it's been a challenging 10 months, to say the least. But Jeff, when he came on board, he asked us to put together a mitigation plan that would mitigate the impacts of the floodwaters that overtopped the interstate and entered into McCook Lake and then discharged to the Missouri River. And so, as Jeff indicated, we were able to put together a scope of services that were, hang on a second here. There we go. So we developed a scope of work with Jeff, and really what we did is we entered into a contract with Respec, who is another firm that does hydraulic modeling. They've done some work with the state of South Dakota in modeling the Missouri River and the Big Sioux River. So we partnered with them to work together on a mitigation plan. As part of that mitigation plan, we've got, we need to update or calibrate the Big Sioux River and the Missouri River flows based on especially the 2024 flood event that we received. And so with this new data that we received, we'll be able to update those models so that we can better utilize the information that we have today, so that we can have a better indication of what that model may result in. So then we also wanted to evaluate the existing conditions model for, as that overtopped the interstate, what happened to that, and where did it go for the most part, and then how can we mitigate that impact? And then we wanted to develop alternatives for the floodwaters that went into the lake, and then make sure that we can contain that within the McCook Lake boundaries, and so that it didn't impact residents that live along there, but then also get it out of the lake fast enough so that it doesn't flood those folks. And as part of a deliverable with this, we would have a report as well as a 30% plan submittal for an alternative that would develop cost estimates associated with that, so that funding could be applied for. And so what you see here is a map, an aerial image, and I'll try to get you oriented. We got Interstate 29 running northwest, southeast. And then if you notice, we've got this blue shaded area that is basically the June of 24 event. And the reason you don't see anything on the east side of the interstate is because we were able to, with our model, we can introduce a flow rate that overtop the interstate at the specific location where it does. And when we introduce that at that location, it basically shows it overtopping at the interstate. We don't have to show the area that's on the east side. Everything on the east side would be inundated, though. It was inundated. And that's the part that we've got our other partner modeling and actually calibrating those models. So this is an indication of what that flood model would have looked like over there. And so we're calibrating that. And when I say calibrating, we're modeling this and making minor adjustments to it because we've got a lot of aerial images that identify what area was flooded and what areas weren't flooded. So we're able to calibrate that model so that it actually is dialed in pretty tight. Oops. There we go. So with that, I'd like to really talk about our scope of work really identified, like I said, the water that came over the interstate. And then we wanted to try to contain that water that overtopped the interstate, try to direct it into McCook Lake in a controlled manner, but then also discharge it out of McCook Lake. And so with this map that you see here is an overall image of North Sioux City, the area east of the interstate, the area west of the interstate. I'll get you a little bit of orientation. The heavy black line on the right-hand side is the proposed levee relocation. The heavy dark line that's a little bit south of that is the existing levee location. So as you can see, everything north of that levee location we show as an inundated area because we're able to model this flood event and actually show that water overtopping the interstate and controlling that. You see the red line there, that's really the introduction of sandbags like happened this last summer. And that is something that's directed by the Corps of Engineers. Back in the 70s, the Corps of Engineers developed a flood plan. That flood plan requires the city to install sandbags so that we can direct the water across the interstate and into McCook Lake and then they'll disperse it that way. So when we do get high rain events and Akron stream gauges actually start indicating certain levels, the Corps of Engineers contacts the city. The city then has to start an implementation of a sandbag plan to basically make sure that the water is diverted. And so that red area there is really just that. It's simply a line along exit 4 there where we can divert that water over the top of the interstate and then into a channel down towards McCook Lake. We will have in the future, we'll have the North Shore bypass as well as North Shore that we'll have to cross under with a box structure of some sort or a bridge there for both roads that would cross there, as well as then dumping it into and protecting the shores of McCook Lake. But then once it enters into the McCook Lake, we want to make sure we looked at alternatives. How can we get it out of there effectively? How can we get it out of the lake so that it doesn't impact too many people? And so we looked at a few different alternatives. One is on the east side of the east leg of McCook Lake, and one is kind of in the center of McCook Lake, dropping south right to the Missouri River. And then we also, in evaluating both of these options, we needed to have some flood conditions taken into consideration. So we got some temporary levees that we would have to install. The green lines that you see on there are levees that would be installed to control that water that would be exiting McCook Lake so that we can control it across a weir structure and contain it in a channel and channelize that water to the Missouri River. We also have to protect McCook Lake from water backing up from the Missouri River. So as you know, the Missouri River tends to flood as well, and so we've had situations in the past where the water from the Missouri River actually will back up into McCook Lake. And so we want to make sure that we're controlling that as well. So as part of this plan, we also are proposing a control structure that would be located within the outlet structure, or the outlet channel, that would control that water from backing up into the McCook Lake. So you see those symbols identified on the south side of the McCook Lake there. Can you guys all see this on your map? So, so then when we get this water, I guess, down to the Missouri River, we wanted to make sure that we're controlling the height of McCook Lake. We took some survey elevations. This is a snapshot or a cross-section of McCook Lake that we've shown some flood elevations where the normal water level is, where our weir structure would be for the outlet, the controlled outlet of McCook Lake. But then what happens when we do get a major rain event, and what elevation do we want that water to get to? So basically what we've done is controlled the height of water that will happen in McCook Lake so that it doesn't flood any of these homes. You see on the high water level there, it actually inundated some of those homes, and that's really what we saw on the McCook Lake flood event in '24. And so we want to prevent that. So that water level rose 10 plus feet. In this situation, we're only going to allow that water to increase in flood stage of about 6 feet. That gives us about 2 extra feet of freeboard, so that we've got a little bit of safety factor built into our model, so that in case the conditions aren't exactly the way we've identified it or proposed it, we've got a little bit of safety factor built into that.
I don't know if everybody can see that, but the lowest basement elevation is 1098.
Yeah, and that's a verified elevation. We went out and shot the actual elevation of what it would be the lowest home that's over there. And we've got that address if you need that, so. And then we wanted to, really, this is a typical section of what that outlet structure might be, or the channel would be. The top section really shows a wider section, 140 feet wide, I'm sorry. What did I say? 120 feet wide. And that's the darker brown that you see. We need 120 feet wide open channel. You can see on the right-hand side of that channel, there's the interstate. So basically, this is just a slice of bread or a cross-section through the interstate and through the land on the west side of the interstate. We're proposing to develop a channel that would have a slope to it that would allow a place or a corridor for that water to be, when it overtops the interstate, it's contained within a channel and drains southerly towards McCook Lake. Once we get to North Shore and North Shore Bypass, we propose a box culvert extension. We've given you a couple of examples of what that could look like, and what we've modeled in this situation as a box culvert. We could also look at bridge structures there instead of actual box culverts. We like the box culverts because we're able to control that a little better as it discharges into the McCook Lake and potentially provide less erosion as it enters into the lake. This is an overview or a plan view of what that might look like if we were to construct an open channel on the west side of the interstate. You can see where we're at there. We're exit 4, the off-ramp. On the right-hand side, the blue lines are contours that really just reflect that channel as that flows southerly towards the twin red lines there are the box culvert that we're proposing, and how that would discharge into McCook Lake. You see the bypass road goes over the top of that, and you see North Shore, how that goes over the top. Some of you that may not be aware of the North Shore Bypass project, as part of that project, we disconnect North Shore from the bypass so that exit 4 actually takes the bypass, and then North Shore itself would tie into Streeter Drive Service Road. So now I want to get a little more detail on the east channel and what that would look like, or could look like, as it discharges to the south. That discharge channel would be located along the south edge. The existing levee or berm along the south end of McCook Lake would be controlled with a concrete weir structure at that location so that it could discharge into an open channel. Very similar to what you just saw on the north end of the lake. What would be discharges then would follow the kind of the terrain as it goes southerly towards the Missouri River, as you can see there. And then we would have that control structure when we get closer to the Missouri River, where that actual gravel road crosses. That's where that control structure would be. And that control structure would allow the traveling public to actually go across that access road, as well as control the water from backing up out of the Missouri. We also show the green line that you see there. What that green line is for is to build a short levee there so that we can contain that water within McCook Lake as it's discharging out of our outfall channel on the east side. If we don't put that levee in there, what happens is we end up inundating a big area up there of farm fields and whatnot. So as part of this mitigation plan, we're proposing a levee here so that we can contain that water a little tighter so that we're not flooding the farm fields as well. And then a south open channel, basically very similar to what you saw on the north side, where we have an open channel. It's a grass bottom, it's a slope bottom. It would need to be maintained. When I say maintained, it would need to be mowed. We'd need to keep the trees out of it. It's a very flat slope, very, very gentle slope, if you will. So if we do have some rain events or a major rain event like this again, we won't get scouring of that channel. The channel may have some damage, some minor damage, but the intent is to slow that water down within this channel as much as possible so that we can control that water as it discharges into the Missouri.
John,
Yes,
could you go back one slide?
yes.
Whose property is the black line going through?
The dark blue is, it's a combination. I think that's maybe Mike Shequin and possibly the Hoffmans to the south.
Bruno, I think is.
Bruno, yeah, Bruno.
Like I said, we have not contemplated all the land ownership. This is just
Hydraulic model, what
just
works.
what can work.
Yep.
And, you know, on this page too, I want to draw your attention to the 100, on this one and on a previous one, the 140 feet is what's required to manage the entire 2024 event. You know, if you wanted to go with something smaller, that's what that lighter one is in the middle. It'd only have to be 70 foot, just to put some perspective on it for you.
So we could cut that channel in half if you wanted to reduce your cost, reduce the overall cost of the project. What we've done here is we've modeled the 2024 condition, but then also looked at if you wanted to scale that back, what would that take? And you're going to see some costs associated with that as well. And that's really what you see is that shadow in there. It just reduces the impact. It's really a kind of a linear reduction in cost. So you'll see that in our cost estimate.
Does the reduced version reflect the 2014 flood or not any year specifically?
No, nothing specific. We're going to have that. We just don't have that yet. This is too early in the stage. We're working towards understanding what that flow rate so that you can all understand it. Right now, what you see on the larger one or the darker brown is basically the 175,000 CFS that we saw coming through Akron, Iowa. What the half rate would be, we don't know what that is yet. We're modeling that to see what it is so that we have a trigger when the Corps of Engineers, they can report to us what flow rate is coming through Akron. We can say, oh, that's going to hit something like this and so on and so forth. And we're working on those triggers. That's something Jeff's been specific about. We want to be able to understand what those flow rates are at Akron to when and how that overtops the interstate system.
Just for perspective, the 2014 event didn't cross the interstate. But could you put up that graph real quick, John, if you don't mind
Nope.
jumping in here for a second?
Oh, that's fine.
I prepared this graph for you, maybe, go to the graph, it's down, right there, bring that into center. Move it over, there you go. So, these are the peak flows, make it a little smaller maybe. There you go. So this is the peak flows out of Akron from 1929, I believe, in any given year. And we know that the 2014 one, which is the second largest peak there towards the right, that was a flow of about 105,000 cubic feet per second. That did not cross the interstate. The other one is the 175. The really tall one is 175, which happened in 2024. So you have to have at least about 110,000 CFS to get over the interstate, and we've only seen that in 14 and 24. And so when we're talking, we want to be able to manage somewhere between that point and the 175. And so as we look at iterations of this, those are some of the questions we'll have to answer relative to cost, land, all that stuff. So, but that gives you a perspective of how few times over the years that it's got to be enough to get over the interstate. So.
And with this model, that's a good point, Jeff. With this model, we'll be able to set those triggers so that we know approximately what flow comes through Akron when it does finally overtop the interstate. And then we'll know incrementally in between there, we'll be able to model that and show you what that, so that as you get reports from the Akron stream gauges, you'll know generally how much flow is going to be coming over. Okay? So then on the bottom of our image here, we've just got some examples of control structures. These are substantial control structures. These would be the type of structure that would be installed in the channel near the Missouri River to prevent the water from actually backing up into the McCook Lake area. And so these costs for a structure like this have not been incorporated into the cost estimates you're about to see. We did want to caution you, these are substantial costs, and we will develop a cost for them. We just haven't at this time. We do want to point out, though, that in the past you've installed temporary levees to help prevent that from backing up into McCook Lake, and that temporary levee was an earthen berm, and we could have that as an alternative to reducing costs on the overall project, to basically have an order to go out and build a temporary levee across the channel to prevent that water from backing up into McCook Lake. And we will have a cost estimate for this. It just has not been incorporated yet into these numbers. And with that, this is an example of where, this is the south end near the east side, McCook Lake outlet. There would be a control structure. It'd be a concrete weir that would be, constructed across the end of that, the McCook Lake berm, if you will, on that south end, to control the water level as well as control the flow over that, so that we can better determine the hydraulic flows that go through there. And so with that being said, what we've done here is we've created a model or a shaded area that gets inundated with this flow of the 2024 event. As you can see, we've contained it. This map doesn't show the blue that would be on the east side of the interstate. All we do is introduce that water in that channel. So as it comes over the interstate, you can see that channel turn blue, and that water will flow down into McCook Lake. Now, in our hydraulic model, you can actually see the water flowing So, that's a pretty substantial computer that shows the hydraulic model. So as the water is increasing over the interstate, we can watch that water flow through the channel into McCook Lake raising up and then discharging through the outlet channel that you see on the south end. And this inundation map is indication of the 2024 event. And now talking about the other alternative that would be an outfall channel on the west side or towards the middle of McCook Lake. Similar to the east side, we would build the green area there that would be a larger berm, just contain that flow so that we can push the flow through our outlet channel in the middle of the lake. And it would have a concrete structure again. The advantage of this alternative is we don't cross any access roads. So this alternative is probably a little more conducive to not necessarily impacting the homes that are located down on the south end of McCook Lake. And so as you can see with this construction of the levee here, this would be following a natural area adjacent to a high bank, and that channel would be constructed to the Missouri adjacent to that high bank, and as we got shown on there.
And this one works a little bit better hydraulically because of the location, correct?
Right. So as we get the water into the lake, what happens is the water increases in elevation, and what happens is that wants to push out as soon as it can, push out of the lake. And the farther away that intake from the intake it is, the longer it'll take to get to that outfall. And so on the east leg, as you can see where it enters McCook Lake and where it exits McCook Lake, we create a hydraulic grade line. And so basically there's a slope to the lake, if you will, as that water increases as it comes in and discharges on the outlet. So this middle area is closer distance, so as a result of the closer distance, it could actually exit the lake quicker, as long as we can make sure we can contain it within our channel and get it out of there. And so this one actually hydraulically works a little better, and we're able to control that. We are able to control it with the other option, though. If for some reason this can't work, we certainly can control it on the other option. It's just we end up making some modifications to our channel on the outlet.
Do they both handle the same flow?
Yes. Yes, we considered, in the conditions, we've considered the same for both channels. And then very similar, the outlet channel would be very similar to what you saw on the other option that you see on the upper portion of the slide. And then the lower gated control structure, very similar. We'd have that same control structure so that we can control that water as it backs up from the Missouri. And then a control structure exiting McCook Lake into a channel that would discharge to the Missouri. So I went through that kind of fast, but you can see on this hydraulic model as well, as that water will come down the Big Sioux River over top the interstate, we capture it within the channel. It discharges into McCook Lake. We can control that into that channel that discharges to the Missouri, as you can see by the blue line there, and we contain that. So this would be the inundation levels based on the same flood event that we received last year. And then I wanted to talk briefly about costs. These are very preliminary at this point. As Jeff indicated, we had two different scenarios, and I want to talk about both scenarios. So the half of the June 24, we just don't have a flow rate to put to that. We know a flow rate. We've got about 1,600 CFS instead of the 3,300, which is what we saw in the 2024 event. So it's basically half of that. So the middle column there is the cost associated with the smaller event. If we were to reduce the channel width, if we were to reduce the box culvert sizes, the costs go down significantly. And then, so as you can see on the top of that chart, we got the east diversion channel and the west diversion channel. And what I mean on that is how it discharges McCook Lake. So on the middle, if we were to construct about half of that, we're looking at the costs associated with that you can see there somewhere in the neighborhood of 14 million and 12 million. And then some of you can't necessarily see that. I might have to zoom in on that a little bit. But we've got about 20 million for the larger storm event if we were to construct the larger channel. Now, this also includes some costs associated with land purchase, which is a big number in there. And so that you can kind of get an idea what kind of a scope and a cost that you're looking at. These costs do not include that outlet structure. We will have that, but as you can see by the paragraph, in the second paragraph there, we do not have that cost associated with this. We would certainly recommend going with at least the event or the channel size that we saw last year, just so that we don't have, the impact that we saw this last time. Now, that frequency was a pretty rare frequency of how often that storm event's going to happen, but we have seen it. I would certainly recommend that if the funding is available to push for the larger channel. We do have safety built into the channels, both of them. Like I indicated, we have some vertical elevation in McCook Lake. We also have that same vertical elevation built into the channels. So we've got a little bit of safety factor built into those. But that would be a small percentage, but we do have 2 vertical feet built into McCook Lake, for example. With that, I'd like to open it up to any questions for you, the council. That's what I had. This is just for information at this point.
Yeah, Jeff, what would be a typical split on a project like this with FEMA and the state and local?
75 federal,
15.
15% state, 10% local. I mean, this is a big project, so we'd have to just see how much money they have available and that kind of stuff. But
And this is something that, based on what Jeff had put together for your plan was to possibly move forward with an application in May to fund maybe the design, so you could get through the environmental assessment. You could work through some of the more details of the design, more details of the outfall, which location is more feasible from a cost standpoint, from just a feasibility, could the land be purchased? And is this even an option to move forward? So the first intent was to move forward with a grant application, potentially for the design and more planning, so that then you would have, your design complete with basically a new cost estimate associated with the project.
How long are you talking, like, to build something like this?
I would say, we're looking at 3 to 5 years. I'd say 3 is the best case.
that would be all the stars aligning and everything working out. But that's why when we talk about the long-term mitigation project, that's probably 15 years to 20 years. And so when you look at that graph I put up there, you just got to kind of weigh the risks associated with what you've seen in past history and make a decision on how to approach this.
Is it possible that if FEMA funds, awards funds for the short term, does that eliminate funding for the long term?
I don't think so, because keep in mind, this project only protects McCook Lake. North Sioux City proper would still be protected by the levee, which, levees can fail. Dakota Dunes, Sioux City would also be protected by their levees. So their benefit from this doesn't change. McCook Lake, it does. So the long term, when they go to evaluate the long term, they'll be able to take all those benefits into consideration too.
Some of the benefits would be obviously the Jefferson, possibly
upriver
Outgoing,
too, yeah.
upper, north of North Sioux.
But that'll be a lot larger scale undertaking too, I would think. If you imagine the channel necessary just to take care of McCook Lake is this big, imagine how big it's gonna have to be to divert enough water north of here.
A lot of information. Be glad to answer any more questions. Please direct all your questions to Jeff, and then he can funnel them back to Ross or I, and we'll try to get you a response as soon as possible.
So what I'd like to do is we'll get some of this stuff up on our website for people to review. You know, again, that's why we're having these weekly meetings, so we can continually discuss and massage this thing to a point where we're at least comfortable making a decision on what direction to go. I thought it was important that this new commission had a viable solution, at least viable from a hydraulic point of view, to know that it can be done. And then you have to take into account the costs, the risks, and the other challenges. But there is a solution out there. Whether it can be implemented is yet to be seen. I also wanted to continue to draw attention to the graph that I presented earlier. Like I said, if this was a 1,000-year flood, that's a 0.1% chance of happening in any year. I think the chance of having an earthquake there is better than having that event occur in any given year. So that has to be weighed into this too, and as we look at solutions to this problem.
And your goal is to have an application to FEMA or the Army Corps by
I want to get in their queue
May 30?
on May 30, and maybe that's to help fund more design work on it. John will be presenting in a minute a work order to cover the cost of developing this to this point and getting it to 30% design, so that we have firm cost estimates to provide for future applications. But then there's also going to be a pretty heavy lift on the design part of it to get it to construction to 90% in final plans. So there's a lot to do on this yet, but this was the best place to start, in my opinion. And, you know, the decisions could range from nothing to all the way.
Right.
And so now we just got to kind of figure out if that's the direction you guys want to go.
I think it heavily will depend on the amount of funds available to the city to move forward with some of these, with the grants that might be available or
And the
loans.
FEMA angle for funding is the most logical. FEMA is emergency management. This mitigation grant is meant for mitigating problems like this. The problem is it's just a big scope. And so we might have to try to fund it over in phases or, phase it in or something. So we just need to continue to develop it.
Any other question?
No, I don't think.
Okay, yeah, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Gives us some hope here.
So we'll bring this back again for discussion at the next meeting.
Yeah, I won't be here. Ross will be here, but he's been involved with every aspect of it, so we can answer any of the questions you have. So at your 4 o'clock meeting next week, so.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to stick around here. I think I'm on the next item.
Okay. Anybody need to take a break? Or are we still
Okay,
good?
we can take a break.
We're still good?
I'm good.
All right. Oh, yes, John. North Shore, Penrose reconstruction.
So this is the agreement that, the work order, you want me to kick that off?
Oh, did I skip
You
that?
skipped one.
Sorry.
This is the flood mitigation work order.
Right.
For discussion, again, this will be something that we can approve at either the next meeting or the one on the 8th or 5th, May 5th.
So do you want to read that, or do you
Oh,
want me to?
I can.
Or I can run through it too, if you want.
So, working on a model, supported concepts, we just saw, the concepts will be presented for discussion. Stockwell is also presenting a work order to study alternative flood mitigation options in response to the flood event. These alternatives include elevations of diverting floodwaters that overtop I-29 to the Missouri River at different locations. Plans for the selected alternative will be developed to 30% along with a preliminary cost estimate. Stockwell will assist the city and CCOG with the funding application. And the financial consideration is $313,000, $230. And this is introduction, so there's no action needed tonight.
Correct. And we kind of already talked about what the scope is. I kind of introduced that. So if you want to get into more of the detail of the work order, that's all the real kind of fine print, if you will, that talks about all the details that would go into what we've been working on already. And then, you know, it talks about the additional services that we would have as we go beyond the 30%. You know, there's a lot more work that has to be done. There's an environmental assessment that'll have to be done. There'll be a lot more work that'll happen after this preliminary design work. We've been working on this since into early January to try to develop these alternatives just so that we could have an idea of what and what option would there be, could there be to do a mitigation plan for McCook Lake. Okay.
Okay.
Again, I'd ask you to review it with an idea of taking it under consideration either next week or the week after.
What percent of the total work would be Stockwell versus other engineering firms?
I would say probably about a 70% Stockwell, 30% other firms.
Okay. And Stockwell has dealt with projects similar to
Yes.
this?
Yep. Some of the pictures that you saw there were images of projects that we've worked on. We do have the capabilities in-house. You know, one of the things, the reason we brought in Respec, they are actually, that's the firm that does the hydraulic modeling for the Big Sioux River and the Missouri River. They've worked for the state of South Dakota in the past, the Corps of Engineers on these areas, and that's really why we wanted to bring them in, is so that you had the confidence that the information that we were utilizing and they were utilizing is consistent. They are also going to provide just a check, a high-level check for the work that we are doing, and we're going to do the same for them. We've been doing a model, updated model of the Big Sioux River since we started working on the levee relocation project. And so our model is also going to be compared with the new updated model that they have, and we're going to be calibrating each other's. They are doing the heavy lift on the calibration though. We are doing the heavy lift on basically the diversion and the rebuild of the west side of the interstate.
Yeah, Respec's been modeling the Big Sioux since 2014 for the state, so they've got that much data and modeling experience on that, and that's why it was important that they be involved in this, so it all can be the same.
Yeah, and they haven't updated that model for 7 or 8 years is what they said. They said time flew, but it seemed like it was just yesterday they had updated that, but they haven't had an updated model for 7 years. And so now with this new data, with the flows from Akron and whatnot, they can update that and calibrate it accordingly. And they're working on that right now. And we were trying to get some of the information for tonight's meeting, but we weren't able to get it. So in the next few meetings, you're going to start seeing that calibration and the coordination between the flow rates at Akron and what that flow rate would be over the interstate.
All right, thank you. I assume you're up for the next one too?
Is that the pay request?
Next two,
Yeah.
Penrose.
All right, North
Okay.
Shore and Penrose.
So, and I can just talk through this one if you want me to.
Go ahead.
So, as you guys all know, North Shore and Penrose were combined into a single project that was a set of plans that was submitted to Federal Highway, FEMA for review a couple of months ago. We've since been working on construction easements and permanent easements from property owners adjacent to the project, and have run into some struggles getting all of those secured as far as the easements. And we're also waiting for the environmental assessment that's being completed by Federal Highway Administration. Federal Highway Administration is funding all of North Shore, as you guys may recall. FEMA is funding everything on Penrose. And so When we put the plans together initially, we anticipated that we could move forward with a single bid package and coordinate the construction accordingly. But in an effort to keep this project or a portion of this project moving, working with Jeff, we've made the decision to split out Penrose from North Shore. And we are requesting to go advertise this project, the Penrose portion, which is about a $960,000 project. Also part of the Penrose rebuild would be the removal of the temporary road on the school's property as well as the private property ownership west of there. We've got a temporary road that we built for the residents on Penrose. So as part of this project, we have to remove those. And so that would also be part of this bid package. So that cost is approximately $960,000. Funding for this project will be, the city would front the cost, but completely would be 90% of that reimbursed from FEMA if everything falls into place as far as the paperwork and whatnot. And we have no reason to believe that it won't. And so that 960 was just a part of the overall project that we were doing as far as in the North Shore. The intent is now to move forward and continue trying to secure the easements on North Shore, as well as finalize the environmental assessment that being completed by Federal Highway, so that we can potentially bid the North Shore project in September, possibly. It depends on how things fall into place here. We do have to work around some other things. As you know, McCook Lake is being cleaned out. They are going to have some access onto North Shore as they remove some of the debris. So there's been a lot of coordination with Game Fish and Parks, the school district, the city, and now we're splitting that project up for Penrose to move forward with, so that we can at least get that done as we move forward. So we would like authorization to move into an advertisement of the Penrose, and so that would advertise the 1st of May, the 8th of May, and then we would open bids in City Hall here publicly on May 21st.
John,
Yes.
where all will you advertise for the bids?
They get advertised in the local newspaper. That's a requirement for us. And then we host the plans on our website. The city will have a copy of the plans in here. The exchanges get a copy of that. So the local builders exchanges all receive that. So they have sources, if you will. And then we also just notify people that we think might be interested in the project. There are requirements, as you know, for meeting some goals and things like that. So the bid documents are put together in compliance with FEMA and Federal Highway Administration.
John, are you saying even if you had all the easements for North Shore, there's still an environmental assessment that's being held up by Federal Highway Administration?
Correct.
Not being held up, just being completed.
It's being completed by them.
It takes longer than FEMA.
Yeah, it's taken longer than they thought. Which you wouldn't think they would need to do a cultural resource, but which is basically evaluating, the conditions that are out there. As you can tell, the whole area was inundated with floodwaters, and so we kind of tried to argue that a little bit, saying, do you really need to be doing some of these things? But it is funded by them, so we want to make sure we're following all the rules, so we don't disqualify ourselves for funding associated with that. They had proposed to do the environmental assessment. It was something that their obligation to do. They told us that back in September, October. They thought initially that it would be done by the middle to the end of March, and it's just taken them longer than they anticipated.
So this is gonna get the ball rolling, that we're gonna start getting some stuff done.
We're going to try to get Penrose done so that we see some progress out there. Because there could be a potential that, North Shore itself isn't constructed until, parts of it, not till next year.
As part of the Penrose project, are there some improvements that can be made to North Shore temporarily?
Yes.
Where there's there's pools of water
Yes.
draining? and-
We've talked about that. We've talked about that and actually working out a couple of different alternatives that we could get that to drain better. We anticipated having storm sewer in those two pool locations where you see those. We anticipated that construction happening now, and we'd be putting those storm sewer and those inlets in, but obviously with the delays, so it was a planned sump in that condition, in that location. So we'll be working with adjacent property owners and see if we can't get a small culvert that would discharge down to McCook Lake there, so we can dewater that this summer.
Also, we've heard that there's not a real safe way to get kids to the school
Right,
along North Shore.
right.
Is there any potential solutions there that could be done with the part of the Penrose project or not?
Well, we certainly could, I mean, the only solution to that would be to widen the access road, to add a bike trail or a bike, or a sidewalk along the edge of the existing asphalt. That's really the only answer. We certainly could put a cost estimate to that and bring that back to you if you want to consider that as part of the Penrose project. And then we could stripe it accordingly. So that would be on the, we originally talked about it with Federal Highway and city staff at that time, and we basically decided not to install it. Now hindsight, we wish we would have.
So do we need a motion for,
A motion to authorize the bid of Penrose,
Yes,
the advertisement schedule as presented.
okay.
I have one more question.
Yes.
first. On those temporary roads that will be deconstructed,
right.
is there any thought or is there a need to keep one of those, like the west one, longer so that Penrose people still have a good access when North Shore does get reconstructed?
We really, at this point, the agreement the city has with the property owners there on that access road expires July 1. So it's our intent to get that done by then. We certainly can talk to the property owners about that. I don't want to put them on the spot
And
tonight, but we certainly
Right,
can
and
talk
maybe
to
it
them
can
about
be
that.
handled with phasing too. I just don't want to pull something out and then be like, oh my, now we have to pay for it.
Yeah.
And later
Yep.
on. I want, none of us want to pay for stuff twice.
We do have a plan to actually, so if Penrose is completed and we're coming back and doing North Shore, the intent was to have an access so that we could phase the construction of North Shore half at a time. So the east half, one at a time, so that the people on Penrose could then come in from the west. And then once we get done with the east side, obviously we'd flip over to the construction on the west side, and we would maintain access up Penrose from North Shore, one side or the other with the phasing of North Shore.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So I don't think we'll need it. It would be nice to have that as a fallback, then we could do that, but I think, it's as part of the package of Penrose, FEMA pays for the demolition of that road. And so that has to be included as part, I want that as part of this, and that's been put into the package that we did for the FEMA application, was part of the Penrose project, was the demolition of those access roads. So I don't think it'll hinder us anyway, so I think it would be okay to remove it like we're proposing. It certainly would be nice to have it, but then we'd just delay a portion of that project that is funded by FEMA, that we'd have to wait with submitting the fund costs, the cost of that project, till a later date.
That
So
makes sense.
I'd just soon keep moving if we can.
I'll make the motion to authorize to bid the Penrose Drive project.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. You've got another item there on North Shore Penrose there, John. You can't,
So the water treatment plant, do you want me to just kind of go, or do you want to read it?
was there another item on the,
No, we talked about the new schedule for that.
okay, yeah, so now we're moving to the water treatment plant.
So this is, what we're requesting here is a partial pay request for the water treatment plant. It's a progress payment in the amount of $338,139.48. We recommend approval of this pay request. It's a partial. We still are holding retainage from the contractor, as well as they're nearing the end of the construction. They are going to be late. The project completion date is today, and we obviously didn't meet that. But we are going to keep track of the days that it goes beyond the completion date, and we'll be working that out with Jeff and you as a commission.
Because there's a penalty built in.
Yes, there are penalty days built, not days, the cost per day is $1,900 per day. And if that takes 10 days, you know, there's $19,000 that we would potentially assess to the contractor. And that assessment is basically based on, it's liquidated damages, it's for damages that you may have incurred. And those damages could be anything. They could be our costs because it went longer, so we had to be out there longer. It could be Rusty's cost because he had to do some other things, and it'd be different things like that. You may choose not to enforce that, but that'll be your choice.
I make a motion that we approve the pay request number 15.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion
Thank you.
carries. Thanks, John. Between you and Sarah, a lot of info. All right, moving on to financial report.
So on or prior to the first meeting in May of each year, we're required to submit or present the 2024, this year, annual report to council. Then it needs to be published and sent in. So it's kind of laid out a little bit like the monthly reports that I've given to the old council that you guys may or may not have seen yet, but a difference with the annual report is they're broken into governmental funds and our proprietary funds. And the proprietary are the water, sewer, and garbage. Governmental is everything else. So there's balance sheets and income statements for each type of fund. I guess some points to point out then with our governmental funds is that for 2024, we brought in $1,088,000 of property taxes and $4.7 million of general sales tax. Another big income item was federal grants in the total of $2.3 million. A lot of that was for the Streeter Drive water treatment plant, a grant that we received for that, and then FEMA reimbursements are also in that category. Major expenditures, just looking at our general fund, public safety and police for $1.1 million was our big expenditure there. Then we could look at the projects, and we spent $4.2 million on the water upgrades, 3.7 on the sewer upgrades, and almost $8 million for the floods. So that brings us down to, we can look at our excess revenue over expenditures just in the general fund. We're looking at roughly $1.8 million. But then when we figure in all of our projects that we did and the flood, it flipped the other way to $11 million deficit. So in the proprietary funds, water was a profit of $824,000 for the year, which does not take into account depreciation. That's a entry after the fact that the auditors will make. And looking forward to 2025, we'll also start having loan payments. So the total of the estimated depreciation and loan payments that we can plan on for 2025 is roughly 590,000 off that 824. And looking at the sewer, we had a profit of 528,000. Same thing with depreciation and loan payments on that, and they're expected to be around 600,000. So with this 824 and 528 excess that we have every year, and we've been accumulating in those funds, we were able to transfer out 7.6 million in 2024 to our projects and to cover flood expenses.
Which the flood expenses will be reimbursed by, some of
Yeah.
them will be reimbursed.
Some of them will be reimbursed. The annual report also includes, we got a column over here for other. So we have schedules that put together all the other. They're just our smaller funds that don't meet the threshold of being shown separately. And the income statement and balance sheet for that too. And then the last thing is our activity in our loan funds for the year. So we've had the 2 TIF funds that are loans on the North Sioux City books, payments on them and our remaining fund balances. And then this year we took on an additional 1.2 million in the drinking water loan and 3.1 million in the clean water loan or the sewer, to get us to our 5.3 and $1.2 million loan balances there. So that's it for the annual report. Any questions? Okay, then this is something I emailed you guys out today, which is our March financial information. Very little change in cash from February to March. Went down like $74,000. We have the statement of net positions, which really not a whole lot of activity at all for the month. Our regular operations had a profit of $177,000. We paid an additional $983,000 to the water treatment plant. We're waiting on reimbursement from SRF for those loans. And then we received FEMA reimbursements of $518,000 on previous expenditures. So, just a second. This never does it when I have IT here, so can't recreate it. This might be kind of hard to see. Where's my thing? FEMA reimbursement so far, we have received 1.6 million, 1.68. All 4 of these, the completed utilities, the temporary access road, private property debris removal, and Penrose, are amounts that we got in March and early April. And we still have 3 at the CRC. So the Emergency Protective Services, the demo of private structures, and the incomplete water and super gravity lines. So that Penrose that is not even out for bid yet, I believe, is this $912,000, right? Mm-hmm. So we've actually already received reimbursement for that since it's a small project under $1 million. Yeah. We're in our FEMA guys trying to get done with us by the end of April, so they could move on to bigger and better things. So they kind of push those through for us. That's all I have.
Okay. Do you need something with check signers?
Oh, yes, I guess the last item is with the new commission. I need somebody that can sign checks with me, especially with Pesha still out on maternity leave. So I would ask for a motion to approve new check signers. And historically, we've had me, the finance officer, the assistant finance officer, which is Pesha Taylor, and the mayor.
Do we need a motion?
Yes, you do.
Is best practice to have one, like, city employee be one of the signers and like a commissioner be the other signer, or doesn't matter?
Generally, we will have the mayor come in to be the first signer. I'll be the second signer. If we need to mail our bills and we need to take a check to the post office real quick, Pesha and I would both sign.
Okay.
And then I will be reviewing the bills, and you guys will be approving them. So once you approve them, then they'll go to you, to these two for check signatures.
So that's why we thought we would keep him off the signer list, so.
I'll make the motion to approve the Amy, Lily, Pesha, and Chris as the signers on the city's accounts as presented.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Amy. Last item, wow.
Yeah. So,
Ten yet.
with Julie's new position on the commission, she was on planning and zoning, so she has resigned that position on the planning and zoning commission to sit here. Jim Christensen has volunteered to sit on that board. He was on the planning and zoning commission before he took his seat on the old city council. So he has experience and has agreed to serve. By the end of the year, I think all those terms are up and we'll have to reseat everybody. But until then, I'd like to just get Jim in that seat so that we can continue business throughout 2020.
All their terms expire at the same time?
That's what it appears to me.
Is that something we should change?
Yes.
That does-
I thought I had a 2-year term that was reinstated like a couple months ago or something.
And the document I saw was all January 2026. So, but
Okay.
we'll have to, when we appoint this next group, we'll have to stagger those terms,
Yeah.
but.
Yeah, that would be good.
So we would need a motion to accept Julie's signature, or, I'm sorry, resignation, thank you.
I'll motion to accept Julie's resignation.
A second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And I'll abstain since it's me.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, Julie, you are off the
Yeah.
planning and zoning.
Did we vote?
Do we need a roll call?
Did we vote?
Oh, we did.
Did, okay.
Okay. And then, has anyone else heard from others who want to serve on planning
We
and
did
zoning?
get one. I haven't really read through it. But like I said, Jim has experience in it, so
And we could use alternates.
we could use alternates, yeah.
Okay. So are we looking for a motion to
To
appoint Jim to
appoint Jim.
fulfill Julie's term,
Right,
which lasts through, we don't know?
end of the year.
Okay.
Did Tim Jacobs turn in?
He did, but I think he did. I seen his name on something that came across.
I know that he had served on planning and zoning here before, and he has served in Sioux City in a
Okay.
capacity, so,
Maybe we can consider him as an alternate for now,
yeah,
but I'll bring that back again after I read through it.
okay.
Do we want to table this one?
I
Pardon
need,
me?
Do we want to table this appointment until?
No, I don't think you need to do
Okay.
that. We can do that in a separate motion, couldn't we?
I just need Jim for tomorrow.
Yeah,
We have a planning and zoning meeting tomorrow.
yeah.
Okay. Is there a motion to appoint Jim?
I'll motion to appoint Jen.
I'll
to
second.
planning and zoning.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right.
Yeah, I think there's one other one, lot R15 and lot 6 of tract 3 of Union Crossing. Need to approve that.
And what is that?
It's a plat, it's been, Ross, can tell you.
Yeah, so PBR Capital submitted a plat of this lot, R15 and Lot 6 and Tract 3 of Union Crossing Edition. It's the very southern edge of their development. It's establishing Lot 6 as an individual parcel for future transfer. And then the Lot R15 is part of the drainage pond area for that whole south end of their development. The current zoning of Tract 3 of Highway Commercial will be transferred to both of those parcels. Stockwell has reviewed.
Amy,
The-
could you scroll down?
Yeah, Stockwell's reviewed the plat in conformance with the city ordinances. All comments have been addressed, and then the Planning Commission recommended approval at the February 26th Planning Commission meeting.
So I think they're plotting lot 6 for a potential sale. Yeah, you can talk.
Yeah. Cole Christian, A1 Development Solutions, I'll make this quick. Representing PBR, yeah, nothing's under contract as it sits. This is just the first step in many steps of platting, this development as we continue to move forward. As he mentioned, that our lot will be detention. There'll also be detention on the north side of lot 6, left of that little L, if you will. All of that will handle the detention on that lot, but yeah, nothing's under contract. We're just platting as we continue up that commercial area for sale.
And this is all zoned commercial?
Yep, all highway commercial, HC. Yep. And just with the shape of that lot, it just made sense. It will have access off Shea Road and then off of our other R13 private access off Sioux Point. Just for that unique shape, just made sense to plot it this way.
Any questions regarding the plat? And this was part of the original land use plan. This was always commercial. Is that what the?
Yeah.
So nothing's changed.
Yeah, this goes back to the annex. I think it was like 2007 or 2008. This was all intended for the commercial development.
Okay, if there's no questions, I guess we'll look for a motion to approve the plats.
I already approved them on planning and zoning, so I don't know if it's appropriate for me to do it again, since I already was making the recommendation from P&C.
Okay. I don't know, the new code of conduct. We gotta make sure.
Yes, sir, can we go back through that?
Give me 50 minutes and we'll get that to discuss.
I'll motion to approve the plat.
Okay, is there a second?
It's up to you, Vince.
There's no reason not to approve this plat. I mean, they've done it meets all the state, all the city guidelines and ordinances for this particular plat. It's properly zoned, it's been approved by planning and zoning, there's really no reason to not approve it.
Okay. With it,
I'll second.
all right, just a second. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? What are you, Vince?
I said aye.
Oh, thank you. All right, motion carries. Let's see, I think, is that everything?
Yes, sir.
That's everything.
Adjournment. Take a
I guess
motion
we're
that,
looking
too.
for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.